some of the things that he talked about that will help us get good tone. So he said the first thing is, he called it imagination. He said you have to imagine the sound you want. You have to imagine your interpretation, and you do it before you ever start playing the keys. So he would sometimes start by having his students, they had to sing the melody of the piece, and he wouldn't let them play it until they sang it with exactly the right phrasing, the right crescendos, the right staccatos. The singing had to be perfect before they ever played it. Second thing is, and this is the topic of our discussion today, Mr. Scaramuzza really focused on tone all the time. He talked about it every lesson. So Argerich remembers him saying, if you don't have a good tone, it's like a pair of pants walking around with no person. There's no content in the pants. So again, looking back on my own study, before I went to New York, part of the problem was I had good teachers, I think, but nobody ever talked to me about tone very much. So I kind of didn't know what I was supposed to be doing about it. Arger said, no, Mr. Scaramuzza talked about tone every lesson. Okay, now we're getting into some specifics about tone. Let me see if I can explain it to you carefully. Mr. Scaramuzza had his own terminology in Spanish, naturally. he called this negative movement. Negative movement means the movement that creates the sound. So let's say you want to get a loud sound on a chord, on a C major chord. Mr. Scaramuzza would say, well, one way to do it is just to go down and let your arm drop on the key. But he said, the down motion isn't as important as the up motion that prepares it. He said, if you lift your arm in the right way and you prepare your fingers in the right way, the sound will be good. So he said the negative movement is more important than the movement that creates the sound. The movement that prepares the sound is more important. And he said it always has to start by relaxing. So if I gave some of my students that, here's what they do to get ready to play. See, there's that claw again. They're getting too tense and they think that's going to make it loud. Yeah, it'll make it loud, but it'll be harsh. So Mr. Scaramuzza said, every negative movement has to start by relaxing. He doesn't say relax the whole time. That's kind of impossible, but he said it has to start with relaxing. He said, the key to having good negative motions is you do the motion as late as possible before the note. So this is something that students lots of times get confused on when they're trying to get a big, beautiful sound or even a singing line is they move their hand too soon. Mr. Scaramuzza said, you have to move just right before you need the note to play. A little tiny bit before the note sounds, that's where the movement. So let's review his steps. You've imagined the sound and you know the sound you want. You want mezzo forte, half note with a ringing sound, legato. All right, you don't start till you have that. Then you plan, what is your arm and fingers going to do? What are they going to do to create the motion? Remember, he calls those negative movements. And then he says, you make the movement right before you play the note. Don't make it too early. Sometimes students make movements too late too, but Mr. Scaramuzza is right. Too soon is more common. So lots of times students do just the right motion, but they do it too soon and then it doesn't work. So he had an interesting way of talking about this, and I've heard other teachers use these same terms. I don't know if Mr. Scaramuzza thought all this up himself or if he learned it. I don't really know. I wish I could learn more about him as a person. I don't know that much. He said, when you're just playing a simple scale, it's like walking. So each finger is one of your legs, and your arm is like the body, and your legs are supporting your body. So the arm weight is on your thumb, and it's on your second finger, and the arm weight just has to transfer. So he called scale playing, whether it's fast or slow, he said it's just like walking. So the key is, when do you transfer your weight to the next finger? Then he made a distinction between when you want a softer sound or you have to move your hand in a big motion, that actually your hand has to be floating. You have to let go of the weight so your hand can move easily to the next thing. So he called that floating. So he described those two things as ways to use arm weight.